We are live, Chair. You know, we're a minute or two early, but we are live.
Yeah.
Say bye to everybody. Thank you everybody for all your support. It's my last day today, so take care. Best of luck with the committee, and thanks David for chairmanship and support. And see you all soon. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't get it. Yes.
I'll give you one after.
Me too.
I'm live with when everybody waiting for the clock.
And now. Yeah, that meeting last time.
I'm actually speaking on Thursday.
Yeah.
Make sure. Well, of course, it's on online, especially. That's already you've seen make a difference in which they're here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee at Shirehall today. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event that the alarm sounds, please leave the building and gather outside the building at the front. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you please to ensure all mobile phones are switched off? In order that those speaking, watching and live stream know who is speaking, could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I shall now ask members and the committee to introduce themselves.
Councillor Cotter, ladies and gentlemen.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall, Rosley.
Councillor Kevin Fardy, Sundorf. Councillor Nigel Hutton, Punk.
Councillor Robert Turnbull, Brown, Key Division.
Councillor Henry Luff, Church President, Craven.
Nigel Lundy, Councillor for Brighton. Councillor Christian Lee, for British North
East and Ashley Alberts.
Emma Green, Principal Planning Enforcement Officer. Gemma Lawley, Developing Highways Manager. Tab Phillips, Planning and Development Services Manager. Louise Evans, Principal Planning Officer.
Nick Hignett, Councillor for Ray Valley.
David Evans, Councillor for Church Craven Arms, and also chair of this committee.
Charlotte Morrison, Development Manager Staff.
Tim Brown, Solicitor.
Tim Ward, Committee Officer.
Thank you. We now have apologies for absence. We have an apology from Andy Boddington, who I believe is injured his foot. We have Tony Parsons, apology, and he's substituted by Kevin Pardy. And we have apology from Richard Huffer, and he's substituted by Nigel Harding. We've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of July 2024. Has everybody had a look at the minutes? If so, could I have a proposal for the two records? Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Second there, please. Councillor Hignett, all those in favour? Thank you. Public questions. We have no public questions received. Disclosure for community interest, please. Any? No, nothing. Carry on. Thank you. Item 5. Development lands at the site at Ironbridge Power Station, Builders, Ironbridge, Telford. And I believe the officer is Louise. If you'd like to introduce her, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. So this is going to be a bit more of an extended presentation than usual, but we'll give members an understanding of how the scheme is developed in order to get to the application that's presented before you today. So as I'm sure you're aware, the scheme before us is a reserved matters application. So it's an application to agree the detail of the access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale of the development. The outline application for which it derives was approved in 2002, and that scheme included the redevelopment of the former Ironbridge Power Station site, and the development included up to 1,000 dwellings and associated improvement and service uses. To give you a bit of context, the application site area is outlined for the outline consent is shown orange on the image before you. Members will also be able to note the River Severn, which forms the boundary with the northern and eastern elements of the development. Adjoining to the east of the site is the Ironbridge Gorge World Heritage Site and Conservation Area, so that's in green. Approximately 1,500 metres to the west of Phase 1A lies the Grade 1 listed Buildwas Abbey, which is also a scheduled monument and is denoted by the red hatching in that image. The small red houses that you can see are listed buildings, and dashed lines are public rights-of-way network that surround the site. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context for the development you're considering today. Next slide, please. Next, we have some aerial imagery of the site back in 2018, before demolition of the cooling towers and other buildings on site, just to rejig your memory. But yes, the application site is located sort of central bottom of this image, and you can note the tree coverage around the site and generally within the wider landscape, as well as the proximity to the river and the existing railway line. We can come back to these images should members have any queries about any of them going forward. So here we have the approved master plan from the outline consent, which members may be familiar with, and which gave like the high level proposals for the form the development might be able to take. As you can see from this image, it was anticipated that the area that forms the application currently before us would be a residential phase. Next slide, please. So as part of the outline consent, the master plan was developed further in order to form a phasing plan, the most recently approved of which you can see before you. Phase 1A is what we are considering today and is denoted by the darker blue on this plan. Next slide, please. So in addition to a phasing plan, condition 5 of the outline approval required the submission and agreement of a design code. This is lovely little document here. The design code was approved on the 11th of July 2023, and the approved design code provides a set of high-level design criteria that is intended to be used to guide the delivery of development through reserved matters application. The code is structured as a two-tier document, tier 1 being the strategic design code, which sets out guidelines that are relevant to the site as a whole, and from which this master plan has been taken, that you can see before you. And tier 2 being a detailed design code that sets specific design instructions applicable to relevant phases of the development. Next slide, please. So here we have an extract from the second tier of that document, which sets some more detailed site-specific parameters. The application site falls within what's known as the gateway character area, and the code recognises that this phase has an important gateway function to the whole development. So it's also important to note at this point that this will be one of the more visible phases of development from beyond the site along Buildwas Road, where it will also be the gateway development into the World Heritage Site, albeit, as members will appreciate from site today, through filtered views from trees and at some distance. Next slide, please. So once the design code had been approved, a reserved matters application was submitted by Barrett David Wilson Homes in the summer of 2023. However, this first application was rejected on 9 grounds by the planning authority. I'm not going to reiterate each of those individually at this point. However, in determining an application, it was strongly felt the scheme failed to create a locally distinctive place that accords with the good design principles and meets with a vision for the development as set out in the design code. That vision being to create an inclusive and sustainable community that truly integrates with its diverse historical roots, recognising the heritage and landscape surrounding the site and reflecting local character. So whilst the layout took a similar form to that shown in the design code, there were significant issues with the development in relation to the access, design, layout and landscaping, and generally the scheme lacked the detail of or justification for the design choices made. The scheme lacked connections both in and out of the development, with the extensive use of private drives, and was disjointed with semi-natural attenuation basin adjacent to the formal building line of the principal street, among other issues. Next slide, please. So following on from the refusal of the scheme, the applicants took officers' advice and engaged with Design Midlands, who offered a pre-year review of the scheme. This took the form of a design review panel made up of an urban designer, an engineer, a landscape architect and heritage consultant. The panel was supportive of the council's reasons for refusal, but recognised the design code was a hefty document that was proving difficult to interpret. The outcome of the review was that it started discussions between the applicant and us officers on developing some more focused parameters for the reserve matters application. From this, we were able to set up workshops and to work on specific design parameters for the scheme and build on the work undertaken to date. We coined this document the Parcel Code, which is what you can see before you today. The Parcel Code is a 2-page document. Sorry, if we go to the next slide, sorry, that and the next page. So once this had been established, along with some further pre-application discussions, came the submission of the current application. The next slide, please. So this was the scheme as originally submitted and the application reference we have before us. So whilst officers recognised that some of our previous concerns had been addressed within the proposed scheme, such as the fully connecting street network and the inclusion of appropriate trees at strategic locations within the site, there were still areas that needed further work. Again, to assist us with this work, the services of Design Midlands were engaged, and once more, and this time in the form of a single urban designer, Stefan Kruskowski. Stefan was able to offer some independent advice and attendance at another workshop to assist both officers and the applicant, which led to further changes to the scheme, including elevational treatments of the dwellings as well as some layout changes. So the elevational treatments now take the inspiration from the pump house, and there have been other changes such as the removal of box dormers from the scheme and the inclusion of features such as balconies for the dwellings that front onto the open space. The layout changes have included a reduction in the number of dwellings proposed from 109 to 107, which has allowed for better parking arrangement for individual plots and the inclusion of more soft landscaping within the streets. Furthermore, there have been changes to the access for the dwellings that front onto the Green Street, and this has been made a no-through route for vehicles. Next slide, please. So that leads us on to the scheme for consideration today, which is where we really start one of these presentations. So here we've got the proposed scheme. I'll just take this opportunity to point out some of the main aspects of the layout. The site has a single vehicular access point. Dwellings in this area have been carefully sited and orientated to allow the greatest opportunity for landscaping in this area to develop and in order to draw visitors into the site. We then have a fully connected street network to allow for ease of access for all road users, including pedestrians and cyclists, but also emergency vehicles, refuse collection, residents and visitors. The potential for future connections has also been maximised, and curved streets allow for appropriate residential design speeds for traffic. We have a primary tree-lined street which extends the woodland through the site, along with a green street affording cross corridors through the site for nature. Vehicular use has been minimised within the Green Street to afford maximum provision for open space areas. This then links with the public area that also serves as an attenuation basin for surface water runoff. The proposals allow for this feature to be permanently wet, providing multi-benefit opportunities for amenity and biodiversity, as well as managing surface water. The basin has been sited on the north-eastern boundary, where it will be backdropped by tree-lined banks of the River Severn, which is appropriate for this semi-natural feature. The dwellings that front onto this area are 3-storey gable-fronted, semi-detached dwellings that not only provide a sense of enclosure for the public space, but will also, as we've mentioned before, be the most visible dwellings from the outside of the site from Buildross Road, which will be used by those entering Ironbridge and the World Heritage Site. So all that being said, next slide, please. Wait for it. So yeah, hopefully we have a video for members, a fly-through through the development. So the dwellings in this are not coloured up, but they do give a sense of scale. The fly through sort of concentrates on the areas of open space in the development. Notice the nice red crimson king tree going down sort of along by the river. These first lines that we'll see there. We come off to a gravel path, a bound gravel path that will allow access or use of access for all. Go past the permanently wet attenuation basin, which you can see that forms a nice attractive feature within the open space area. Don't know how much more we're going to be narrating. Like around there. Come back. I said these are those sort of gable fronted dwellings you can see sort of joined together to provide sort of that sense of enclosure and on that nice rhythm. We come down now through the green street, so we've got pedestrian and cycle link down there, straight corridor, following desire lines, got active frontages on both sides. This crosses the main street then, back down through the rest of the green street, and head back towards the trees that you'll see on the perimeter of the department. There we go. There we go. Next slide, please. So moving on to character, which is something that officers felt previous iterations of the scheme failed to capture. As previously mentioned, the vision for this development is to create a locally distinctive place that recognises the heritage and landscape that surrounds the site and reflects local character. The elevational treatments of the dwellings has altered drastically from the first iterations of the scheme and now takes inspiration from this, which is the pump house. So this is it in all its lovely glory. It's a 1930s building that was used for taking water from the River Severn into the former power station, which operated from the 1930s until the 1960s. You'll be able to note lots of design detailing within this building, including contrasting coloured brick windows around, contrasting coloured brick checkerboard detailing, parapet detailing, arched entrance, the use of curved bricks on the entrance, just to name a few. But as I said, sorry, it's a bit of a distance there, but it's quite difficult to sort of capture that and the sort of scale of that building. But there we go. Next slide, please. And next we have a selection of the proposed house types. This is one of the key buildings on the entrance to the site and includes the parapet detail that you can see from the previous image, contrasting colour brick detailing and the arch entrance with the use of curved brick. Next slide, please. Here we have a simpler detailing which incorporates the use of contrasting brick in a more modern way and elongating the window patterns. Next slide. Members will note that there are no hip roofs within the scheme, and box dormers have also been entirely replaced with more discreet roof lights, as shown in that image. Next slide, please. Members will also note that the recommended conditions include for the final agreement of all external materials, and there is another condition which will allow officers to agree an offset between the contrasting brick blocks, as it's considered that some degree of relief between the two will allow for more emphasis to this proposed design detailing, resulting in a better overall appearance. Next slide, please. Here we have, next slide, please. So this is the three-storey dwellings that front onto the River Severn. You can note that as a pair, they have an attractive symmetrical design, which is enhanced by the brick checkerboard detailing. Next slide, please. So this is just a final view, that sketch view of that of those three-storey dwellings overlooking the public open space. So to wrap this up, this is the first phase of the outline scheme for 1,000 houses. This is for 107 dwellings on this site. Officers recognise that this scheme will set the tone for the remaining development across the site, and thus has an important role in that regard too. Planning conditions are proposed for this reserved matter scheme to deal with certain aspects of the design and finishes, but subject to the use of these conditions, the scheme will result in a high quality and well-considered development that accords with best practice and requirements of the approved design code and adopted planning policy, and as such is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Lee. We have no speakers today, so we can open this committee. Councillor Tindall, please.
It's just two questions. The second one first. That building from which the architecture of the scheme was taken, is that still standing?
Yes.
And where?
Where? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's the,
Yeah, so if you want to go back to one of the maps, this,
it's
Keep going.
the, it's the one where you took the arch and the,
so it's yeah, no, well, yeah, we'll stop on any of those. So, so can you see in that image where the site is?
yes, okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
you
yeah,
follow the river up, so past the next sort of residential phase.
yes.
Right next to the river, just as the red line sort of comes down, yeah, there, that's it. That is the pump house. That is where
And that is still there.
and that yeah, obviously
And
the
that
image
will
that I
remain
got was, and that will remain there. That is, yeah, subject to
It will
remain
be
as part of the
developed.
consent.
It'll be developed or something.
Yes, so it's part that again, that is something that is to be agreed as part of the outline consent. But yes, yes, there is a condition and that requires yeah,
Okay.
community uses.
Yeah, okay, and then the sort of rhombus shape or whatever it is in the middle, that is the National Grid transforming station, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is not still going to be there
Yes.
and will continue to function as mains electricity. Just saying.
Well done. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether we were all on the committee that considered this as outlined, so I just thought I might mention.
Okay.
Thank you. No other questions?
Yeah, just reading the report, it mentions that there are a couple of issues with the development in terms of their greenness, if you like, in terms of they're constructed to 50% higher than building control regulations, as I understand it, and they all of them supposed to have electric points. Is that right?
Yeah, so building regs requires, yes, electricity points for all the developments. But yeah, part of this proposal, the applicant was required to submit a energy statement that comes with the application. Generally, what we've got is a fabric first approach. So, i.e., they have invested in insulation in excess of building regs and use materials like that allow for more appropriate air tightness, which I think is what you've picked up on in the report. They'll also be serviced by air source heat pumps. So every dwelling will have its own air source heat pump that will be used for heating and hot water within the dwelling. So yes, as far as we're concerned as officers, they have sufficiently dealt with the energy requirements of the development.
You also, the other point I was going to ask, given the uncertainty of energy supplies in the future and so on, how many of them will have solar panels?
So solar panels are not proposed as part of this scheme currently because the dwellings will be in excess of building regs. So as in they've used the fabric first approach, which is what the industry does recommend, as well as the use of air source heat pumps. So as in solar panels are not necessarily the only renewable energy source that will provide energy and hot water supplies within this development. That will come from the use of air source heat pumps. There's nothing stopping applicants in future if they wish to obviously apply those, but as in there won't necessarily be the need because, as I said, there'll be air source heat pumps. They may be able to invest in other technologies such as battery storage and whatnot for themselves as well if they want to go in excess of what they've got currently.
Okay. Councillor Parker, please.
Thank you very much. It all looks very interesting. I know there's obviously we haven't got any speakers here objecting, and it's recommended for approval. The only comment I would make is we don't have to have chimney pots on anything nowadays, or which I suppose are redundant because we're not burning fuels. But I think it does add to a historical character of the area, particularly with Ironbridge across the river. And it's, I have a development in my ward where the one half of it doesn't have any chimneys and the other half does, and the one that does looks better. But I know that's subjective. It's just a brief comment, but I'd be minded to support it anyway.
Yeah, well, just to come back on that. So the use of chimney pots was the bit, as I said, as you can tell from the presentation, we've had a lot of design discussion within this scheme with the applicants. At one point, we had suggested what about the use of chimney pots. I mean, what I would say is that the design code does talk about this being a modern development. It's not necessarily, as I said, what in fact the parcel code itself was getting at was we don't want to create a pastiche. We're not here replicating houses in Ironbridge necessarily with the use of chimneys and whatnot, but it is a modern housing development that takes a nod to some of those things. Clearly there wouldn't be the need for chimneys as part of the development, so they would just be sort of fake, they would just be fake features, wouldn't they? that could be applied. But I think we all felt that wasn't a very honest development, shall we say. So yeah, we wanted the modern aesthetic within the development, and we as officers pushed for that as well. So
Dr. Tindley, you want to come back?
Yeah, simply, I've advocated chimneys right the way through my time on this planning committee. But the last few years, the chimneys are completely ornamental. No practical use because there's nowhere to light a fire. So as I grow up slowly from childhood, I think that's right. I think if there to be no fireplaces or solid fuel appliances, that we stop having chimneys on very modern development. So I support the fact that there are no chimneys, although you wouldn't have heard me say that a few years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you. I just want to have a discussion about the access onto the property, over the bridge. And could we just have some clarity about what the long-term plans are for that bridge, please?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of discussion about the bridge, to be honest. So with regard to the bridge, there's a planning condition that's on the outline permission that requires Harworth, who are the kind of master developer, to submit sort of 2 stages of information. First of all, a kind of like a plan of the use of the bridge, and at outline stages established that the first 250 dwellings would be served off the bridge, but then so that would effectively be phase 1, phase 2, and then after that the access onto Wenlock Road, which would have been a construction access, would then serve the development, and the bridge would be downgraded to pedestrian and cycle and emergency only, and potentially passenger transport, subject to it being adopted. So as an authority, we're currently going through the process of agreeing those sort of terms, and there's been no decision as yet with regard to the future adoption of the bridge. It's to be kind of resolved before March 25. So I don't know if that answers your query or not really.
Okay, so my understanding then is at the moment it's just going to be used for the construction of stage 1 and 2 as a form of access, and then it will be downgraded to more pedestrian and cycles on a footpath, and that's the plan.
That's correct. And so as an outline permission, Shropshire Council are the kind of lead authority, but Telford and Wrekin were also kind of party to it and the determination. And I think from their perspective, certainly Telford and Wrekin, they were keen to reduce the impact on the Ironbridge Gorge, and that was one of the key kind of considerations really from their perspective. So
yeah, that's.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Higney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Having been on the site visit this morning and had a chance to look at the various viewpoints from this and looking at the details on it, I'm actually very much in favour of this. I like the design and appeal to the house types. I think the contrasting brick detailing is, as outlined, is very important. I really like the idea of the tree-lined avenue through the centre of it, giving plenty of pedestrian access as well as cycleways. I think the adoptable perimeter highway is going to be very useful around there, which could possibly include further access for vehicles in the future as the schemes progress. There was very limited visibility from Bilderus Road when we went up there on the minibus afterwards. I think the site is really well screened anyway, so I have no problem with overlooking from surrounding land. And finally, I'd like to thank Louise and all the officers that have worked on this for arriving at what I believe is a really acceptable development for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harding, please.
Yeah, thank you. One of the conversations that we had earlier about chimney pots made me think about something else. So apologies if it's been covered before at the previous stages. It's generally my view, I think, that all new development should have access to at least 2 forms of heating. So one drops out, you go to another. And too many housing developments these days seem to be developed with just one power source. So that if we lose the electricity supply, there's no fallback. What's the situation here? Is there gas supplied to this particular development, or is it purely only electric? Is there only ever going to be one power source available? I couldn't read that in the report at all.
Well, it's in that's reviewed.
Right.
Sorry, it's electric only.
It's electric only.
Again, some of these details, I think it's important to note that we are dealing with a reserve matters
Yes,
application.
I'm sure that may have been covered in the previous application, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, so as in they have met the requirement, so as part of the reserve matters scheme, they did submit an energy statement that has complied with those outline requirements. So I said it would be difficult for us to ask for anything more than what we've got, so.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Lumby, please.
Yes, I'm very impressed with the pedestrian walkway through the middle. Concern I've got, if you went to the plan of that, is that there's a main road then crossing it right in the middle. So as a consequence, I'm not seeing any safety measures, because you're going to have cyclists. You said it was a cycle route and pedestrian. And what's going to happen? The other phases are going to come down through that estate as well and use that as access, and you've got a main road, the main road running right through the middle of it. So what considerations are given regarding safety?
Yeah. If we go on to some of the other slides, just to make sure that I've got I keep going. Right, go on. Well, as in obviously the layout sort of, there we go. Okay, we'll stick on this one. So we've got, as I said, through the slides, it's not exactly the theme that we're going to be considering, but yes, as I said, it does allow for that green street. Just to be, what we've got is a what is going to be a secondary street running through the site, because the primary street is the highway that we saw today, created by Hartworth. So yes, we'll have a secondary street coming off there to serve these dwellings. Yes, there will be a crossing point in the middle through the green street. Is that's the bit you're concerned about? Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that we fought very hard to keep that green street and that sort of green route in there. And a condition of consent is the requirement for the reserve matters will be for all street furniture to be agreed. So as in we can have a little look about how that street furniture is used to provide safety there. But there will also be, as part of the outline consent for this phase, they will be required to come in with highway plans and adoptable highways. So in order for the local highway authority to adopt, we can consider some of those matters, at that point in time. So I wanted to come back a bit more.
Okay, Gemma. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of clarify in terms of the access. It will only be for this parcel. It won't be a free kind of vehicular kind of access really. And and from a kind of a passenger transport perspective as well, but it's unlikely that the bus will sort of divert through. It will just be vehicles that are using the development itself. But as Louise says, there will be a full submission of the kind of the highway kind of elements of it for future adoption.
Councillor Tyndall, please.
Yes, I can quite see Nigel's concern about that intersection between what will be a road used by vehicles and a drive running from southwest to northeast will be cycles and pedestrians only. It's probably too detailed a comment, but would an underpass be appropriate? They're all shaking their heads. Have I said something rude?
I just found that you haven't said anything rude. No, it's just from a sort of, from various different aspects, from an adoptable ability perspective, and also sort of diverting the kind of pedestrians and cycles. So we'd always want to give priority to pedestrians and cycles. So I think as part of the kind of the ongoing comments, we'll have a look at that detail when it comes to the engineering details that are required to be submitted as part of the discharge conditions applications.
Councillor Lee, please.
Yes, so with the raised that crossing area, will it be like a raised area?
Raised
to-
platform. I think that's how it's-
a platform with it?
Yeah, do you want me to come back?
To use.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was always what that area was anticipated was as a raised platform.
Yeah.
But as I said, the final detail of that will come in through the conditions where we will consider that. Yeah.
I think councillor has got the answer.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Councillor Harkin, do you want to come back?
No, I think that's just been covered by councillor Lee.
Councillor Chairman, do you want to speak or Barney? You want to?
No, Chair, I'm
All right.
fine, I'm happy.
Councillor Bagdell, you all right?
No, I think everything's been covered.
Okay, any more questions for Louise, please? Then I'll ask for a proposal in a second. No more questions? Have a proposal for the application, please? Proposed by councillor Lapp, seconded by councillor Ed Potter. I'll ask him now to take the vote, please, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, so if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against the officer recommendation to grant permission, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1, with a delegation to officers to refine or amend the conditions as required. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Nick Hicknett.
For.
Nigel Harton.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Hilary Lutt.
For.
Nigel Lumby.
For.
Kevin Pardy.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Robert Tyndall.
For.
And David Evans.
Four.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. We now got a list of appeals, a list of appeal decisions. It needs to be noted. Unless anybody's got any relevant questions to ask. Councillor Tingle.
I don't think it was within the Southern Planning Committee area, but there was an appeal that was granted for the refusal of an affordable dwelling elsewhere in Shropshire, and the inspector's basis on his decision, I think, gives quite some support to the applications that this committee have been approving, even though the planning officer, or the one planning officer who was vehemently against us granting the consent, but I have taken comfort from the inspector's decision that this site should be allowed. And it's only just been, the decision has only just been published, so inevitably I've forgotten the name, but
I think it was in my ward.
Yeah.
it was indeed, yes. Are you happy with the?
I'm happy.
He looks happy.
Well, I think, sorry, I don't mean to bang on.
No, that's not on our agenda. That one is for today.
Do you want me to shut up?
Well, no, I'm just saying it's not on the agenda. List of appeals, that one. And it's on the North Planning Committee, but I just think you're making a point.
I'm making a point.
Yeah, okay.
That we've had some guidance from
Yeah.
an inspector
Yeah.
as an appeal for the refusal for affordable dwelling. I think that will help this committee in the future.
That is noted, all right. Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Right, a date of our next meeting is Tuesday, the 22nd of October. I'd just like to thank everyone that's turned up to the site visit this morning. Sorry I couldn't make it. I'd like to thank the officers for all their input and what they've done. Excellent drawings and everything else. And I'd like to thank James and everyone for the help. And wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.